Well, tonight we're going to specifically look at how we're using AI both today in the education space and how we're going to be using AI in the future in the education space. So really interesting topic. I think education is one of those industries that the last major, invention was like the overhead projector. Actually, it was first the tablet, right? You went from like slate to tablets, the overhead projector, to the whiteboard. But I think AI is the next huge thing to really be revolutionary in education. So I'm really excited today to introduce. I'm just going to introduce quickly, name and where they're from, and then I'm going to turn it over to each of our speakers and take a seat myself. So to my left, I'm going to have the assistant professor at Loyola University, Dr. Jake London. To his left, we have Mo Ezderman, who is our chief of AI at Mindgrub. And then to his left, we have Dionne Curbeam, who is the CIO at Coppin State University. So the first thing I'm going to put for our speakers, our panelists here, is I'd like you to introduce yourselves a little bit more with how you're using AI at your respective organizations. And then not just how you use it, but how you see, what's your theme of how AI is used in the education space today. Because we're going to move from how it's used today to how it's going to be used in the future. But how do you use AI, and how do you see education using AI today? So I won't pick on any one of you. Who wants to start? Dr. London? All right, jump in there.
So thank you for having us. My name's Jake London, soon to be associate professor at Loyola University. So excited about that. I use AI probably the way that most people use it. There's something that I don't really know how to start, or I'm at some sort of roadblock in a problem, and I'm just like, ChatGPT, what do you think? And I think that that's the way a lot of people are using it. How I'm trying to encourage my students to use it, there's probably maybe a different perspective how we're going to use it institutionally inside of a higher education. But how I'm trying to encourage my students to do it is that old Silicon Valley move fast and break things. Just get out there and use it. Whatever you're asked to do, if you have to make a resume, ask it to do the first draft, ask it to look at what you've already done. If you have to do an interview, ask it to ask you questions that you think you might get in that interview. If you have a math problem that you don't know how to solve, see if you can get it to help you solve that problem. Because they're going to go into the working world and they're going to use it. What they need to understand before they get there is where the boundaries are, where it's going to let them down, so that they're not surprised, or so that they don't turn in work that's not sufficient for their job. So I'm trying to get them to use it, because that's the only way that they're going to learn how to use those tools in the real world.
So in general, you see education using it kind of broadly, generative content, specifically kind of a ChatGPT, but you're really getting your students to focus, and you happen to teach in the information systems area of Loyola. So how are they going to really use it as a practical application in their business industry per se?
That's how I'm aiming at, yeah.
All right, so Mo, Director of AI for Mindgrub. Very much like you, Mindgrub, when I think you came on board, we were using generative content like ChatGPT, maybe doing a little bit of pair programming, but you've brought an ambassador program to Mindgrub. So how are we now using it at Mindgrub?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Mo Ezderman, leading the AI innovation at Mindgrub. And when I came on board, I think there's two things that we're doing. One is the internal AI ambassador program that Todd mentioned. And that's basically how do we enable internal employees to use AI and being more effective in their daily job. So that's a program that we started. It started kind of a 6 weeks program that we're learning about how to use those tools. And after the 6 weeks, we start identify opportunities in the organization of how we're going to utilize AI internally. In addition, what we're doing for our clients, it's we start building like new type of systems, which call agentic AI. Who here heard about agentic? That's amazing, because that's the future. And for those that not familiar with agentic AI, there's a lot of confusion about agentic AI, because like everything that's doing something smart today, everybody's calling agent. It sounds really good, but agentic AI for us is a system that has memory that can actually execute tasks in collaboration of the user. So it's not like autonomous 100%, it's collaborate with you. So if you guys use ChatGPT, it's similar to that, but also it's connecting to internal systems. So it's connecting to CMS, HR systems, and take this data and actually start making decision with collaboration of the users. So that's what we seeing a lot of opportunities with our clients, is that we start looking in internal processes of each company that we're working with and really identifying opportunity how to make processes more efficient with AI.
Excellent. And Dionne, how do you see education organizations using AI today, and how are you specifically at Coppin? And also introduce yourself as well.
Sure, I'm happy to introduce myself. Good evening. I am Dionne Curbeam. I'm the Vice President of Information Technology and the CIO at Coppin State University in Baltimore. And from my perspective, from a dual lens, a CIO, I need to keep my campus safe. As a VP of IT, I need to be visionary. So from a dual perspective, from a safety perspective, we have taken an approach of how can we provide guardrails to make sure that people who decide to engage in AI components understand the types of data sets that you should and should not use, the appropriate way of using it so you do no harm. So I established an AI task force within my division, and Melissa, who's here, she was part of that. And we came up with some guiding principles, some points, and we decided to take what we call an AI steady pace of how we decided to implement that. From a visionary perspective, as the VP, I want to make sure that from an institutional perspective, we can first have AI to impact the student experience. Because as an education institution, if we're not there to impact students, then why do we even exist? And that can even show from itself of how can we make things easier? How can we make things more efficient? How can we provide mechanisms of opportunities for that? So in shaping that vision, and shameless plug, if you go to www.coppin.edu, and if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you will see Jackson. Jackson is our AI chatbot that crawls our website. And it helps to make it so much easier for students to find information or any visitor. And as we move this forward, one of the things that we're looking is to see how can we triangulate the data of the types of questions that are coming to help with our strategic plan. For an example, when we looked at some of the data, particularly around spring break, we noticed a lot of students were searching for food. And if you think about it, is that a possibility of food insecurity? That the calf would be closed. You know, we have what we call the Coppin Corner. And as we're getting closer to graduation and commencement, some of the questions that we're seeing are questions about, well, I need to pay my bill. When is graduation? And it's making those things so much easier. And so we're putting together some key performance indicators because we don't want to do this for the sake of it being cool and fun, but we want to show what is the impact. You know, our offices seeing a reduction in calls, in emails? Are our students finding stuff easier because of what they're getting through Jackson? And we have a whole vision of how we're going to expand upon that. So that's the dual role of how I'm doing it from both parts.
No, that's yeah, I like that. That's some clapping there. I mean, that's wonderful. That's good lead in the next question, in that not only are, in the first part of what you talked about, is that AI is coming, everyone's starting to use it. We might be lightly using it, like ChatGPT, doing some generative content, and you want to put some security around that. But then now you moved in the direction of, here's a use case where AI is really helping us out, and it's answering a lot of student questions that otherwise a would struggle to find on the website, or maybe they have to get a guidance counselor, so it's maybe saving some human capital time. Where I want to go to is kind of that next evolution of where should AI be helping in education? Either because here's a pain point or some friction in the organization operationally, or here's where we might be understaffed and we can't fulfill positions, or here's where our teachers do a lot of rudimentary, like grading. Like, for the love of God, can AI just do grading for us, right? Like, it's a huge pain in the butt, right? So I'll put this question for anybody. Where do you think the largest pain points are in education that AI should be leveraged to step in and displace our human capital from having to do that? It's a pretty leading question, but that grunt work.
I can take that. Just because I was thinking about it. I have like 2 kids in high school, 15 and 17. I was thinking about it a lot. And there's so many potential for AI to really internal efficiency, efficiency for like grading. But for me, what I'm thinking about it's actually personalization. Like right now, everybody's learning the same thing. You go to a class, everybody's reading the same book, the same subject, but everybody has different interests. So I think where AI is going to be really effective is like, what if not everybody's learning the same thing? We have like a generic goals for the class, and every student can actually interact with some sort of agent and basically learn what interests him or her in that domain. And what if like you actually can learn from, I was thinking about it the other day, like what if you can learn physics from actually Albert Einstein? You can actually create like a VR experience when you can actually learn from amazing people from the past. So I think like personalization and having more connection to learning, I think that's where AI probably going to have bigger impact on students beyond the optimization and efficiency and things like that.
Well, I couldn't agree more. So I was a little bit of a problem student in the old elementary school, and I couldn't sit straight. And they used to send me to the GT resource lab, and I got what seemed like kind of Montessorial education. They're like, well, you can do whatever you want here. And so I bought actually rock tumblers and polished rocks and made jewelry in the 2nd and 3rd grade. And at field day, I ended up making a couple $100, and the school didn't know what to do with me. And they called my parents, and they're like, oh my God, is he in trouble again? They're like, no, he's got like $300 on him. He's in 3rd grade, and we're worried about sending him on the bus. That was my first business. But it was like this Montessorial. If you're familiar with Montessorial education, it's you basically experiment, and then you provide just-in-time education as that student is basically experiencing what interests them. The thing that kills me about the modern classroom is, particularly you look at like public education, the average is 34 students in the class, 1 teacher, and they are giving the same lesson to all 34 students. And that's a major problem. And heaven forbid, I was stuck in a class learning the same thing as other 34 students. I might not be where I am today. The fact that they kicked me out of the class and put me in a classroom where I could learn whatever interested me, and at the time it ended up being making jewelry and monetizing it, right? That has been a big contributor to my life today. So I love that point, right? How do we get back to being more Montessorial, personalized education? So even if there's a basic premise of what 34 people need to learn in a classroom, the teacher's no longer the sage on the stage. No longer are they just a guide on the side. They're really the mentor, really helping to craft I don't want to get too technical, but if the teacher could see the rag of what each student wanted to learn, right? That would be where we need to get to. What are the other thoughts? Where else in education do we need to leverage AI to take education to the next level?
Well, I just want to kind of extend that because I think I fully agree. And for all my teachers that had to teach people like Todd in elementary, happy Teacher Appreciation Week to each of you. And thank you for all that you do and for students like me. But to kind of extend that a bit, I think AI needs to be that gap, to fill in that gap for whatever the student needs it to be. And what I mean by that is with talking in terms of like the personalization of education and so forth, a student may be brilliant. But imagine if they are a first generation student and they don't understand the financial aid process. So they may not need an academic tutor. They might need someone to assist them with navigating the challenges of filling out the FAFSA, understanding the difference between loans and grants, how to do work study. They might need that encourager. Maybe they just don't have the discipline. They could be brilliant. They may have their education paid for, but at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're still in bed, or they don't have that motivation. And maybe AI can give them that nudge of, this is what you need to do. This is the motivation factor. So if there was a mechanism to say, okay, Dionne, we know that you tend to do 500 things at one time. This is how I recommend that you slow down. And this is how I recommend that you have your calendar. And Dionne, if you don't know how to find a simple thing that says, here is the speaker series, and you have your friend Melissa say, hey, there it is, maybe AI needs to be that actual GPS for you to say, Dionne, walk here, walk there. So it needs to help even to a granular level from a broader perspective, from academic to administrative, from psychological to wellness to motivation of whatever that student needs them to be to get them across that finish line.
Here, here. Yeah, I don't understand why Siri is so passive. Right? She just sits there and waits for you to ask her for things. Like get it together, Siri. Tell me what I need to be doing. I don't understand that at all. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, any other ideas?
I was just going to say.
Yeah, Dr. London.
I was just going to say student support. That's always understaffed. And I think that there's, it takes effort for the students to say, I need a tutor in this. It takes some humility, and getting over that hump can be very difficult. And then when they finally do get over the hump, there just might not be enough people to fill those roles. But AI can be an incredible tutor. I teach a undergraduate Python programming class, and I can ask AI to solve a problem, and then I can ask it to solve it incorrectly. And in solving it incorrectly, it gives the students an opportunity to figure out, debug the code, that's what the term we would use, figure out what it did wrong, and then you can ask it to do it wrong again and again and again, and it can keep making different mistakes each time. And that can provide students with learning opportunities that would be almost impossible to recreate in the classroom or in a tutoring situation. And so using AI in really novel ways to fill in those student support gaps, to help students learn without forcing them to be the initiator, to just admit, ChatGPT, I don't know how to do this. That's, I think, an easier step, and I think it's actually a low-hanging fruit for university. I think it's an easy way for universities to start integrating these types of tools into the services they provide for students.
Absolutely. Actually, on that point, and I saw Kim, you had a question. We're gonna have questions at the end, so save your questions, and we'll pass a mic around in a little bit. I have a list of questions here, by the way, from Brandy, and I don't know if you guys did your homework because I know she sent you the questions, but one of them is based on the executive order. So first off, my question is, what the heck does the executive order say? Does anybody know that answer? No? Okay. Does anybody know what the executive order that Mr. Trump put out there about using AI is in education? So I think he made a broad statement that we must start from elementary school onward. We have to start leveraging AI in the classroom. And it's as broad as that. So just to take it a next step further, we've talked about how we can put some guardrails around AI, how we can get students to think about it from different use cases about using AI, but how specifically, and we talked about the personalization so that we're not teaching 34 kids the same thing with one teacher, Sage, on the stage, but how else can we start using AI in the classroom, like to fulfill this very broad, executive order. So if I'm a teacher in the classroom and I'm like, yes, I am using AI for the benefit of the students, not just I'm going to ChatGPT. What is that thing that I could then check the box that now I have leveraged AI in the classroom whether it's elementary school or higher ed. How are we going to use it?
I don't know. I hate to say that. I'm the sage on the stage. There's three of us. I think it's going to look different in different age groups. In the elementary school, I would say that if you can use AI to allow the teachers, like to grade for the teachers so that they can spend more time with the students, I think that's a great use of AI in the classroom. I think that there's a real challenge introducing AI without proper guardrails in the classroom to just using it as a knowledge substitution tool. I don't have to learn this on my own. And we've all done this. I mean, how many phone numbers do you guys know? Like 2, right? Because my cell phone remembers everything for me. And we probably experienced this with Google. I no longer have to know things. I just have to know how to look it up. Pretty soon, we're going to have to know, I don't have to know really anything because this thing knows things for me. And so I think that you're really going to have to think very carefully about what it looks like. Integrate it as much as you can. But what does it look like in elementary school? What does it look like in middle school, high school? That's a huge challenge.
No, I like it. I mean, now we can get philosophical. There's two schools of thought here. There's one that we embrace it, and if you've seen the movie Idiosyncrasy, which is where like one of the dumb people, like I don't know what happens, like they get in a coma or something for years and years and years, and then they wake up, and it turns out that they're actually the smartest person in the world. Because they know how to do reasoning, because everybody else just turns everything over to AI to do their reasoning, right? So, funny movie. But I'm like a disruptor, and I look at education, and I realize it's based on a 160-year-old model since the Industrial Revolution. Based on World War II, the Industrial Revolution, not even World War II, but the Industrial Revolution, we basically wanted to create factory workers. So we created, yes, thank you. So we created these education institutions. We rang bells. We put people in rows, and we teach them how to do repetitive tasks at the end of the day, starting with math, English, history, and science, right? To do repetitive tasks to create factory workers. And when I think of the future, and I think of like my, personalized, self-guided, Montessorial type, and I think about the fact that now Mindgrub is a 100% remote company. We still, our headquarters is here, but 100% remote. Generally, everybody works except for some Gen Xers that like to come into the office every so often. I think about the fact that if 2 parents are working remotely and their kids are at home, how can we homeschool them without the parents having to be the teacher? And the answer is AI. So when I look at the future, I look at like not how is AI in the classroom, which it can certainly help there, call it a teacher's aid. I look at how is AI become the teacher. And right now we do have homeschooling for kids that, get injured, for instance, and they can't physically make it to this brick and mortar and move around with a bell ringing system. So they end up doing homeschooling. And there is some self-paced, self-learning, not personalized, not AI-guided education now. And that's the other place that I see AI really filling in, is to start to pick off some of these, call them the GT students, right? Which, other than the social skills they need, which we still need to bus them to athletics, music, other social activities, the academics that they learn could be potentially done through AI and homeschooling. And I see this is the radical shift, not necessarily bringing AI into the classroom, but bringing the classroom into the world and having what would otherwise be what looks like remote schooling or homeschooling be governed by AI. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think as I'm thinking about school and education, the role is going to change what school is, right? Like the reason why we have education hundreds and 100 years is to gain knowledge. It was all knowledge based, right? Like I grew up with 10 books in my home. If I want to have more knowledge, I'm going to go to high school. If I want to have more knowledge, I'm going to go to college. But right now, as we see, like large language model has all the knowledge, right? Like I can learn anything at any time in my own pace. So now we need to think about what's the role, and I think, Todd, you mentioned it, like what's the role of teacher in school? Like if they don't need necessarily the teacher to provide the knowledge, what do they need to provide to the future students? I don't know what the answer is.
No, I do. I think they're the curator. I think if you look at like art institutions, right, and you go to a museum, it's not just all art. You don't just walk in there like, oh, whatever art you want, it's all here. They curate a certain vibe, right? I think teacher becomes a curator of knowledge, the same way that a curator at a museum curates what artwork they might see.
Yeah, like guiding, kind of like I'm thinking like, is it become like a kind of a think tank school thing that you're coming in and you have ideas and the teacher kind of help you execute those ideas? But yeah, they become like moderators of the class, right?
Right, moderators, guide, vibes, right?
Can I continue down your philosophical path?
Yes, please do.
That I'm not sure if anyone has read the sociological study called School Teacher. I think it's by Dan Lordy. It was done, and it showed how schools operated, and they repeated this study at least 3 different times over 3 different generations. And one thing they realized is that the school, the way how things were done, fundamentally did not change. So to your point, we have to consider if we are we're still, even though we're digital, we still have an industrial-based school system. And are we committing educational malpractice by not trying to be disruptors of changing the way of how we do things? So one of the things that we have to take a critical look at is, if we want it in our schools and be disruptors, is getting it into the hands of the teachers, the ones that are going to be in there day in and day out, and fostering ways of how they can use that differently. That's going to take the role of leadership from our principals, from department heads, from school superintendents, to show how they can use it as an example and then allow it to trickle down. And that we know some teachers love them dearly, but some of them may be a little slower than others to embrace ideas. So how can we actually move the laggards and those on the later end of the adoption scale to become more comfortable with technology? Is that inverse mentorship, that you have the students mentoring the teacher in how to use AI? Is that giving them that safe zone, as you said, the Silicon Valley role of that, you know what, you won't be penalized if you do something wrong? What are the incentives of not just showing students that, hey, this is the light bulb going off, but certain other type of incentivizations, and making it easy to access? Because sometimes in education, we don't always do that. Sometimes it's a lot of bureaucracy that goes along with it. Sometimes it's just a lot of red tape. So how can we break those barriers, just get it directly in the hands of the teachers and let them champion it? Because they're going to be the best evangelists to change the school system and get that effort done.
No, you're absolutely right. Here.
Here.
Right? So, I mean, I don't know if it's a rhetorical question, but how do we get it in the hands of teachers?
Well, there are a couple of things. One, other than breaking down the walls and going in there, providing opportunities such as this, where teachers can come and just explore, have experience days where they can come, providing licenses to teachers, say, hey, why don't you try this? Going into the classrooms and say, hey, I'm going to come into a classroom and we're going to do an activity for a day, getting it into their hands, providing resources to them, providing opportunities that they can showcase. Sometimes you may need to trick them to say, hey, would you like a day away from your school and come and drink some sangria and eat some pizza? And then while they're here, say, oh yes, how about we pull out your phones and pull out a picture and try this? And maybe not necessarily try it from an education perspective, but to say, hey, why don't you plan the dream trip that you want to go on? And this is how easy it can be. Or how do you plan your Thanksgiving meal with ChatGPT and capture them? And then once they're captivated, say, you know what? Your students can do the same thing. Sometimes you got to use a little jealousy factor. Once you make the teacher so that, okay, I'm going to profile you on here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, then other teachers say, you know what? I want to do the same thing. Boost their morale, encourage them, motivate them. And quite honestly, you're going to always have that laggard group. Identify those laggards and don't waste your energy on them, because they're always going to pull you down. And then eventually, once you get a good ground swelling of those teachers and educators that are excited and are doing that, then the others start to come along.
Damn, you nailed so the premise behind our ambassador program is I'm like, we use EOS, and if you know EOS, it's an entrepreneurial operating system. I'm like the vision, and then I have an integrator, and then I have all our managers run the L10. I'm like, we are going hard on AI. We're going to use it. We're going to do it for our clients. And everyone's like, he's just trying to replace our jobs. And like, I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've always been like, I was our first developer, our first designer, you know, but for some reason now I'm like the evil capitalist at the company. I'm being somewhat facetious here, right? But Mo's like, listen, no, you can't top down AI use. You need to have it be peer implemented. So if you figure out who are your champions, your ambassadors in each of your different departments in the organization, and they embrace AI, and then they peer-to-peer, right, teacher to teacher, as we say, they teach their peers, that is the fastest way to roll AI out in an organization. Now, you're absolutely right. We do this for corporations, but you know, Dionne, it sounds like education could really use this like ambassador program. That's something I would put our venture dollars behind, because education is the one place that I see, you know, I joked in the beginning where I talked about the overhead projector and the whiteboard and stuff. I see AI as being pivotal to an amazing pivot and revolution in education. And like, just to get teachers to embrace it, because unfortunately, I think of a lot of industries, education is one that teachers are always worried about being displaced, right? Like even in Mindgrub, our team members are worried about displaced, but I think teachers are inherently worried about, because it is an old model. It is literally a 160-year-old model, so they know at some point disruption is coming for them. But it's about kind of cobotics. How do they embrace AI and use it? I think an ambassador program would be wonderful. So this is huge stuff here. What else do we think we could do to really help revolutionize education in terms of AI? Like where would we start? So if I'm a teacher, and granted maybe I don't have an ambassador program, but I want to start embracing, you know, the 21st century here as far as like AI, and not base it on this old education model of I'm lecturing to students, where do I start? Dr. London, where do I start as a teacher in leveraging AI?
The challenge for teachers is always the school year. Once that train starts rolling, you're just trying to stay in front of the train and not get run over. And so you oftentimes don't have time to pull over and be like, well, I want to play with this. And so I'm kind of always aware of other technologies that are coming up, and I would just love some context for how other people are using it. I don't need to know how to use it in my class. I want to know what kind of interesting ideas that you're having in yours. So I think that, and this is, to answer your question, I think that this is a big mess, and where you start cutting, I'm not quite sure, because education institutions, they need money, and these tools are very expensive. You know, Loyola has looked at acquiring a license for ChatGPT for faculty and students, and it's just mind-bogglingly expensive. We can't do it. We just don't have the money. And so if we can't do it as a private institution of higher learning, how can, you know, an elementary school in Baltimore City afford to do it, right? So there's a huge money factor, and I think that there's a lot of people in technology, I don't know, business, that say that they like education and that they want to support education, but at the end of the day, education needs money for these tools if you're going to roll these out to teachers. But then there's the other side of it. It's the student side of it. And you have to change the relationship that students have with performance in an AI world. My students have a very adversarial relationship with me because I'm the keeper of the grade. And they want to know what they have to do to get the grade. And in that environment, ChatGPT will get them the grade. It's not about learning anymore. It's about getting the letter grade. And so if we want to move beyond into more of a Montessorial approach, which I think is amazing because these tools can be so adaptive to that environment, then there has to be kind of a a paradigm shift with how we do credentialing, how we think about performance, what it means to be successful as a student. It can't just be about letter grades, because ChatGPT honestly can outperform even our best students now. So I don't know where to solve that problem. I think it's a sticky problem, but I think you're absolutely right. It is one that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, no, one quick or tip. I taught at UMBC for a number of years, and grading was the pits. So I told the students, I'm like, there needs to be a bell curve of, so many C's, so many B's, and so many A's. You don't have to give yourselves D's and E's, but I just made them grade each other. They were harsh. They were really harsh graders, way harsher than I was. But at the end of the year, everyone had a portfolio, and then everybody basically voted on the portfolio. And based on the curve, we distributed them through A's through E's as well. But you really had to screw up to get a D or an E. But I just made them grade each other. Like, you should totally try that. It was like...
That's actually an agentic technique. Like when
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Like when you obviously ChatGPT, the hallucination and everything. So one technique to make sure they're not hallucinating is ask another Claude, what do you think about the answer? And usually they kind of like negate each other if like something is wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So we're about the time where we're going to open it up to questions. And what we'll do is we'll go to questions, and then you can start thinking about like what does AI look like for education 5 years from now? And you'll give just a vision of the future. So you can start thinking about it. What does 5 years from now, which is a lifetime as far as AI is concerned, right? 5 years from now, what does education look like in AI? And it can be in one sentence. It's just kind of a vision statement. But while you think about that, I think, Jen, you were going to go around with a mic here. And let's get some questions going.
How you doing? So the question I had was something that you were
introduce yourself first.
Sorry, sorry. I'm Brandon Banks. I'm from the company Shapiro. I'm actually next door to Mindgrub.
Oh, wonderful.
Yep. So the question I had was something that you had touched on in terms of integrating AI, but also kind of addressing that it may have some like personnel cuts kind of deal. But when you really think about it, to kind of keep all of this together, there really isn't a way to eliminate the human element, because you have to have someone to make these algorithms or like set it up together. So my question is, aside from what you had said before, do you think there would be any other initiatives to kind of promote the idea that even with the radical change with AI, there's still no way that is going to eliminate a human being behind it, or like it'll change a role, but it effectively won't it won't remove you from it. It'll just change what you're doing in terms of your role in whatever company or organization that you're in that's utilizing AI.
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question that everybody's asking. Like, is it going to replace us? And the answer is no. And unless we're not going to we need to develop different kind of technology for it to replace us. And I explain why. The way under the hood of those large language models, it's a prediction machine. You just prediction the next token, the next word, and it's going to get it wrong. It's a probability machine, just like a roulette machine. Every time I'm putting a token, I'm going to bet that the next token is going to be, I'm going to be right. But it's going to be wrong. And that's why we need human in the loop to make sure that the response from the AI is always the one that we're expecting. So is it going to be disruptive to job? Yes. We're going to have job displacement, but also we're going to have different kind of jobs that AI is going to create. So for those that kind of worried about job, I think the best things that we need to do is just like be really integrated into AI and understand how to do things with AI, and then nobody needs to worry about it.
Yeah,
So,
three quick thoughts. So the world is going to be those that use AI and those that don't. It's displace and not replace. And then the last thought is, you think of a lot of industries like back in the day, there were switchboard operators, and if you wanted to place a call, they literally had to, you'd call the switchboard operator, they'd say who you want to call, and they'd connect them on the switchboard together. And that job went away. It's not like they've been on unemployment lines forever. They just found new work, right? You think of travel agents. Every community had a travel agent that you used to have to go to book your your train tickets, your plane tickets, right? Your itinerary, right? And they're not on the unemployment lines. They just found new work. So again, it's replace. It's not replace. It's displace. So as humans that use AI, eliminate some. We like to say, and forgive my French here, but there's your hit list and your shit list, right? The hit list is the things you want to do. The shit list is the mundane, repetitive tasks you don't want to do anymore. That's what AI is going to do for you, to displace your time and energy into doing more strategic, higher functioning tasks. But the grunt work, that's what the AI needs to do for us. Like paying bills, nobody wants to keep paying their bills. It should be automated. Why do we have to manually write checks? Why do we have to manually log into websites and pay bills? If we got the money in the account, just get it done, right? That's displacement.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
I think it's going to take jobs. It's not going to take all jobs. It may not take the jobs that we think. There's no question about it. Switchboard operators, ATMs. I mean, those are all examples of jobs that go away. But I think it's going to come down to people that use it and people that don't use it. And the people that use it are going to be 3 times more effective than the people who don't. And that's going to show on their performance. And the people who don't use it are hopefully going to retire, or they're going to go find something else to do where AI is not as disruptive. But in knowledge tasks, it's so capable of doing the mundane, getting you 75% answers that allow you to take your expertise and add that extra 25%. It's going to happen. So, yeah.
I concur with my colleague. And I think that this is also an opportunity for people, especially for universities, for education institutions, to provide pathways for individuals to retool their skills. When I think about, when we go to grocery stores now, we have self-checkouts. When we go through the tolls, we have the Easy Pass. And think about the workforce of the industry of people that those things replaced. So those different level of individuals might need opportunities to retool their skills. So as we develop strategic plans for how we want to integrate AI even into our environments, for those types of mundane tasks that it will replace, what can we do as organizations and industries to help retool those skills of those employees? Does that mean providing micro-credentialing? Does that mean providing partnerships with places like Coppin, Loyola, that individuals can go back to school and get degrees or newer type of degrees? Because while it's going to replace, we want to make sure that individuals are learning skills that they can still be competitive. Because what we don't want is to have another generation of a digital divide of the have and have-nots, of people that don't know AI and can't get into certain industries, people who are knocked out of certain types of jobs because they don't have the skills, and people don't have the access and understanding of those type of things. So I think we need to see the opportunity in retooling, so we don't just have a whole line of people, because it will replace jobs.
No, and you're absolutely right. And you touched on like the whole like inclusivity of it as well, which is a major problem, right? It's going to be those that use AI and those that don't use AI in the future. And I hope those lines aren't along, traditional lines of economics or, racial or whatever way it is. And so that is just something that we all need to take away and make sure that AI is very inclusive, because you're absolutely right. It's going to be a big divider in the future, right? Which is a real shame. Other questions? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Pam Jones, and I'm with Baltimore County Government. I'm working in the Blueprint program. And for those who are not familiar with the Blueprint program, basically its aims are to ensure that while not every student will go to college, every student will be ready for a career. Sounds like a wonderful goal, but it is hard, very difficult to get speakers and resources and what have you for the students. And if I had one wish, it would be for this agentic AI to be able to have a student sign on and have kind of a no, not necessarily a short conversation, but a conversation about whatever area of specialty they want to go in. And we have so many students that ask, well, let's say for, I don't know, networking and cloud computing. Gee, that sounds like a real good field to go into. And I've been looking through Indeed, and they make a lot of money. But what do I need to get from point A to point B? And it would be nice to have this agentic AI available so that the student could type in something like cloud computing and get some feedback on that what that area of specialty requires, and maybe even have some links so that they could do a deeper dive into their research.
You're 100% right. So the most successful school systems have a strong partnership with corporations in the area. And those corporations help drive the curriculum into jobs, right? I have sat on the workforce development board for the county. I'm on the board of the Maryland Roundtable for Education, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it is a connector between careers and education. And then you're, as far as the blueprint, you're talking about pillar 3, which is college and career readiness. And let's talk afterwards, because you're absolutely right. We don't in this region have a great bridge between corporations and education institutions. There's a big disconnect there. There's other regions that do a lot better than us. And we don't have a great connection between our curriculum and career pathing. And I know Pillar 3 and the blueprint is going to provide some funding for that if we can afford it. But aside from that, like, there are some things we could put in place today to bridge that for students. And it could be absolutely a very much a coordinated effort. Like Maryland Business Roundtable for Education, they have the content. Put it in a rag, put a bot behind it, and put it in all the county schools as a career counselor on their websites. Done. Yeah. Pam, I'll find you. We should definitely talk about that. Other questions?
I'd like to just add to that, because I think that one of the things that was surprising to me, I just taught a class on AI and business. One of the things that was surprising to me is how low-hanging fruit that is to set up a RAG bot and train it on organizational information. It's not that, I mean, you have to have skills to do it, but organizations can do this. Like, you don't have to have rocket scientists on board. You can reach out to.
It's no code now to do it.
It's no code.
It's no code.
And so, like, it really is. I think that is going to be agentic in that front is really going to be game changer.
I fully agree. Yeah, the tools these days, like, yes, the bot or the agent is way better with custom programming today, but if you get the 4.0 version of ChatGPT, you can create custom GPTs in there that'll do a much better job picking, Christmas gifts for your entire family. Right? I mean, really. And anybody can do it, no code.
I think for personal use, when you don't have a lot of data and you have some files, you can actually do RAGs like custom GPT. It's getting obviously more complex when you need to ingest like a lot of data, and that's where things failing. But that's probably going to get better over time. But for personal use and kind of small teams, custom GPTs and like no code solutions that are available today can do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, there's some very simple no-code things these days, but when it really comes down to it, the world has moved toward multi-agent now. So think of like how your entire organization works with like a functional hierarchy, and then you can create an agent hierarchy that does the same thing, and then you have essentially like the curator agent that then knows how to get the other agents talking to do something. That still requires a ton of custom programming these days. Now, the trick is it's that ROI. So once you have that custom multi-agent system in place, does it eliminate that mundane turnkey work that your humans were doing to free them up to do higher and better use case to grow your organization's revenue, your bottom line, create operational efficiency? Like, absolutely. But you gotta scratch the surface somewhere. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Matt Bucci. I was a teacher for 6 years, just recently transitioned to a career in technology. And this topic is exactly why I made that jump. I have kind of a two-part question. The first being when I first started teaching, my second year was when the pandemic hit, and the reliance on technology was expansive, obviously. And then a couple years later, the advent of AI, ChatGPT, also completely changed the landscape. And the one thing that I really noticed in my students was a widening disparity of intellectual curiosity. You had your high flyers really relying on these tools to expand their knowledge and further their education and get them to places where maybe they wouldn't have gotten had it not been for that tech. Conversely, I had plenty of students who were able to rely on it to just get by. My question is, how have you seen that in the higher ed space, and how do we change the educational landscape to continue making it challenging across the board and still fulfilling?
You are absolutely right. I've heard this now several times, and this is alarming. This is that movie Idiosyncrasy, in that we stop being intellectually curious, right? That's actually what makes us human, is being intellectually curious and want to explore, want to problem solve, want to figure out that next thing. And I've heard this now multiple times, in that each new generation is less intellectually curious. This is a major problem, a huge problem for humanity.
So I think that's probably the most important thing we should teach the next generation is curiosity, and find the curiosity and bring them into a classroom with 30 kids that all study the same thing. Definitely not going to accelerate curiosity. But if we're asking every child, what are you curious about? I'm sure there's a lot of things that they're curious about, but sometimes we just like shutting it off as a parents. Don't do that because you're not going to make money and you're not going to have good career. But I think everybody's curious, and now they have the tools to explore the curiosity. So I think in education, maybe one of the most important things is like how to figure out the kids' curiosity.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think is it Morgan from Loyola was talking about like the power of liberal arts education. My kid's actually going to Ithaca, and one of the big case studies they have is a student who was like completely uninterested in school, but in biology class they had fun drawing all the different organs, and they didn't like biology, they didn't like education, they were generally not a good student, but they really had fun drawing all the different organs. And a teacher found them an opportunity to basically draw for health textbooks. And to this day, this student is a very successful illustrator of, organic parts for health textbooks, and thriving because of it. Because, I started with Montessori education, right? Like, I was a troubled student, and they sent me to this resource room where I got to explore. You're absolutely right. It's that intellectual curiosity, great question, that we need to facilitate and curate, right? Because if we're just lecturing to 34 students in a room, and now we have AI lecturing to 34 students in a room, we're going to create a bunch of drones that is going to actually propagate the movie Idiocracy. So, yeah. So how do we teach? That's the $1 million question. How do we teach intellectual curiosity? And I think the answer is like, we got to study like that Montessorial philosophy, so to speak. Yeah, you had a thought.
I was just going to say, I see the same thing that you see. I've been at Loyola 7 years, started right before the pandemic. And there is kind of a bimodal shift that's happening. It used to be a normal curve, and now we've got two peaks, at the bottom and at the top. And the people at the top are interested they're doing things because they're like, well, look at this thing that I can solve. The people at the bottom are surviving. They're biding their time. They came to college because they needed something else to do. I'm not sure what that is. My job as an educator, I think that it's my responsibility to motivate, to open their eyes to opportunities that they didn't know existed. I try to base all of my assignments in class on kind of real world, hands-on stuff so that it's not abstract, it's not theoretical. It's here's something a problem that we're solving, because I think people like solving problems or curious about solving problems. But at the end of the day, I think that the tools are making it so easy to check out. I think that a lot of people are checking out, and I don't know what to do about that.
That is actually challenging. In fact, I was talking to some colleagues about that, even from an athletic perspective. That student athletes, used to come and think, like, okay, I'm here to get a degree, and I'll play basketball, and I'll play football. Now, especially with NIL and all the different changes, their focus is, okay, I'm here for basketball, and okay, I'll take a couple of classes while I'm here. The engagement has totally flipped. And again, to your point, how can we as the leaders, as teachers, motivate and inspire curiosity? Is that more project-based learning? Is that more saying, okay, you know what? Here are just a box of rocks, figure it out? Is it, okay, create your own assignment and there is no A, B, or C, or D. I want you to get the lessons along the way and explain the lessons, but finding those new ways to inspire. And if you figure it out, I'll give you $1 million. I don't have $1 million, but if you figure it out, somebody will give you $1 million, because that's what we need to figure out.
All right, is there one more question here, and then we probably need to bring it home? Brandy.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy, and that was very profound, and my question's probably not as profound. I'm the one responsible for that piece of paper Todd was holding with all the questions, some that may or may not have gotten asked. So my question has nothing to do with that piece of paper. It has to do with a few answers back, something that Todd and Jake said, and it's more of a terminology question. So I'm actually going to ask it to the audience. How many here, please raise your hands, know what a rag is? All right, not so bad. But as a good marketer, I always believe in explaining things. So please, Todd or Jake, tell us, what is a RAG?
Yeah, so RAG is an acronym for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So if you have an LLM, a large language model, like ChatGPT, generative preprocessor text, I don't think I got that one right, but another acronym. So ChatGPT learned off the internet. So you can ask it questions about the internet. But if there are questions that can't be answered by the internet, and I want to augment those questions, I put it in a RAG, a Retrieval Augmented Generative area. And so my LLM, if I have a chat bot and I'm like, hey, what is the, velocity of an unladen swallow, and it's not on the internet, which it would be, I can have that in my RAG, and the LLM can go to the RAG and find out the answer and then tell me, because I've augmented the content. How'd I do, Mo?
Perfect. And this is really important because businesses, all the data is not on the internet. It's like in the internal system, and that's what RAG is really effective.
One of the questions that was on the sheet of paper that I thought was really good is where do people start and where do they not start, or where do they start and where should they start? And I think where they should start is with digital transformation, because RAGs don't work without digital transformation. And any organization that's of any age that has paper files anywhere, your LLM can't read those. So you got to get them digital so that it can answer questions in a retrieval augmented generated way. So yeah, I think that RAG systems are incredibly useful in their ability to see behind firewalls that organizations have set up. We have private information here. It's about our customers or HR services or whatever, and we don't want the whole world to know about that. So we're going to keep that internal. The questions get asked of the RAG bot, and then you seed it with the answers from internal information, but it has to be digital to get there.
And even more than that, like digital, you probably like are already in a good place, but in a lot of cases, it's in people's head. So the first thing is like really you have to document everything right now, because then you can do maybe AI in the future.
Absolutely. All right. So I got to bring it home here. We're at time. So I gave you at least like 10 minutes now to really think through 5 years from now, what does education look like? Anyone want to jump in?
It doesn't have to be long, right?
No.
Very
Remember,
short
it's just a quick quip here.
I think it's a personalized, autonomous friend, someone that follows you through your educational journey, that's not tied to an individual institution, that remembers conversations that you've had, can suggest things. Why don't you try physics? Seems like you like that in high school. I think that if we could get to that point, because people are, I don't know if it's a social media thing or whatever, people are less and less embracing what used to be mentorship type relationships. And so they still need mentors. If an AI could be their mentor, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, like my thinking about like future education, I don't know, like 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, but no more specialized subject and domain. So maybe we're not going to go to computer science, and because we need to know everything. We need to be able to know what sells. We need to know how to write software, probably with AI tools. So less about specialized education, more about like a lot of different domains.
And I concur with all of that. And in addition to the personalized for students, that teachers, staff members have their own personalized agent. So it can help with grading, can help with time management, but also we will see inside of our schools that there is curriculum that is intentionally designed for students to know AI. They can graduate with a certificate or a badge with AI, and that by 5 years, that all teachers will have some form of AI literacy, that they will understand how to use it.
I love that. So it's that co-pilot, it's that teacher with literacy. As far as a student, it's that guide on the side, but it's maybe not a teacher. It's their agentic AI guide on the side that's personalized, that's real time, just in time, right? Providing them a Montessorial type, self-guided education so that every human can become a strategic thinker, right? So let's give a big round of applause. Jake, Mo, Dionne, thank you so much. This was a super rich conversation. And hopefully our presenters will hang out for a little bit if you have some more questions we were able to get to. I'm sorry, but I want to keep to the clock. So thank you again.